Okay. Okay, this is Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship. We are in Galatians 2 for today. This is 2b, the second section of Galatians chapter 2. So we're going to sit back and wait a few minutes for people to come on. And let me get the chat popped out here. Still setting things up a little bit. And so when we get the chance, if we can get some idea what kind of delay we have going on, that would be useful and helpful. Let me get this. All right, almost there. There. That's ready. Now we got to get our scripture ready. Ooh, there we are. Looking for that one. Okay, looks like we're set up and ready to go. Just see who comes in. It's a little before 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the June 3rd, isn't it? June 3? Yeah. So just wanting to get everything set up and running. Hopefully everyone's got the notice come out. Have to remind people to hit the subscribe button. I think you get a notification when we go live. Sorry about the confusion from an hour ago. I suddenly was gripped with this fear that we were about to start in 5 minutes and I wasn't even set up yet. And so I raced and threw everything together and got things started, said we're live, and then I finally realized the time was an hour earlier than I needed to be. So that's me being me. Okay. So I was looking at my picture here. Uh-oh. That's right, it's here, isn't it? That's right. Okay, let me check this real fast. All right, that's not being helpful. Okay. There. I think we have our act together now. So, just going to wait a little bit, see who comes on. If someone comes on, and then we will begin. It's 5:59 right now. I know I'm starting a little bit early, just so the announcement can go out and people can get on. So, according to my computer, it's now 6 o'clock. All right. Let's give it a couple more minutes for people to come filtering in. I wonder if I can find out. Okay. So far it looks like I'm the only one on. Well, at least I'll have a really good audience. All right, let's get this back on where it belongs. All right. Okay, I'm just going to mumble on here and wait till people come along. Let's see. Okay, good. We're plugged in. We're running. Everybody should be happy. Okay. This is kind of odd and awkward for me because I'm not used to not having someone to talk to. Shalom, Ruchama. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Now that we've tried it and had no issues, you know, maybe we could meet at the park on a rather informal basis. I think the powers that be might have an objection if we start meeting there regularly for services. But even if we just hang out, have lunch, and just discuss the weekly parsha or something like that, I think it would work out nicely for us because it's more of an impromptu gathering than a proper service. And who knows, if the governor's not there, maybe we'll even do some singing. All right, so how are things going for you? Things getting back to a normal med-surg floor for you? Okay. It's probably a few minutes delay before you're hearing me. It's 6:04 right now according to my computer. So I don't know when you are getting this message. So hopefully we're not just hanging up, but things seem to be running. I did a speed test when I first set up, and it was really, really, really slow on the download, which doesn't affect much, but the upload side was just about as fast as normal. So I'm assuming that the broadcast goes out just fine, and it might be slow anything coming back to me. But since usually it's only text coming back to me, that shouldn't be a problem at all. And the fact that we're up and running and you're connected, lets me know things are at least working a little bit. Okay, let's try this. 6. Oops, wrong thing. Eek. There we are. All right, shalom, Elsa. Good to see you. Okay, I'm just trying to track the amount of delay we have, so I have some idea how to plan things. If I want to schedule any questions, I have to make sure that we have time for people to hear and answer. Okay, so Barbara's on, Elsa's on. Life is good. I do have to ask a question of you, just to be sure. Are you going on to the YouTube page and just seeing a live chat going on, and that's what you click to get into, or are you subscribed and hit the notification that you get notified directly when this goes live? Curious because currently I try to let Yafan know ahead of time, or as soon as I get things set up, and then she, I guess, posts it on our web page or on the YouTube so people know that we're on. Not YouTube, Facebook. Sorry, our Facebook page. So that people know that we're on. I'm just curious to know how it is you get a notification, or you just show up on the YouTube and find it that way. Find out that it's on. Okay. Okay, it's 6:08 now. Okay. At least you're working. That's good. There was such a uproar at Ellen's hospital that the state finally showed up and starting to ask some questions about how things were handled. It still doesn't make sense, because I was asking her what happened with the nurse to patient ratio, because in NICU where she works, it's a 1-to-1, 2-to-1 kind of a ratio, depending on the severity. And if they're pulling nurses out of NICU to put them in other places because they're not scheduling nurses in the other departments, it seems like you're going to be understaffed for the babies that you have. And on the other hand, why not just bring back those nurses that belong in those departments? Because the other half of the problem is Ellen and the other NICU nurses were being yanked out of their department and thrown into labor and delivery, mother, baby, and C-sections without even knowing. They've never been trained in those departments. So, that has its own issues and risks. Okay, 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, not horrible, but at least it's working. Okay. Anyways, so they really made a big stink about this, and the management was running around, and half the time they were saying, well, just suck it up and live with it. And I asked Ellen this morning about that. Are they short-handed in NICU because they're pulling nurses out to do other departments? She said, no, actually, they're staffing for the other departments through NICU. I have no idea why they're doing that. You would think it would be better to have a couple nurses from that department come along and fill in their own stuff. And the big difficulty is that the nurses weren't trained for the section that they were working in. They're NICU nurses. Oh, excellent. So every time the YouTube goes live, it tells you? That's good. That's what I needed to know, because I was concerned, how do people know? So I guess that what I need to say then is let's make sure, to as long as I'm talking about, let's do the YouTube thing. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you can. It's funny because our main entertainment these days is watching YouTube channels, and of course that's the spiel that everybody does. And I'm thinking, how silly you got to say that every single time, and here I am doing it because I want to remind everybody to do so. And because it's not Sabbath, I can throw in the other thing. If you wish to support this congregation and the function of this live chat, you can go to our website, and there's a PayPal link that you can go to and donate that way. You can always mail in a donation if you wish through the P.O. box. All that information is on the website, simchatyeshua.org. So I usually need to spell that 3 times for people. It's simchatyeshua.org. So that one's a hard one for people to catch sometimes. If you're up on your Hebrew, we're good, but if you're not, it's a little bit difficult. Okay, it's about 12 after 6 right now. People will come in as they come in. So what I want to do is go ahead and get started with the B section, the second section of Galatians chapter 2. And I want to start at the beginning of chapter 2 as a little run into our part for the day. Okay, so here we go. Then after 14 years, I again went up to Jerusalem, this time with Barnabas, and I took with me Titus. I went up in obedience to a revelation, and I explained to them the good news as I proclaimed it among the Gentiles. But privately, to the acknowledged leaders, I did this out of concern that my current or previous work might have been in vain. But they didn't force my Gentile companion, Titus, to undergo Brit Milah. Indeed, the question came up only because some men who pretended to be brothers had sneaked in. They came in surreptitiously to spy out the freedom we have in the Messiah Yeshua, so that they might enslave us. Not even for a minute did we give in to them, so that the truth of the good news might be preserved for you. Okay, and of course this is Paul talking to the Galatian congregations. That's plural, by the way. Galatia is a region, a Roman province, sort of in the mid-north area of modern-day Turkey. So there wasn't one single congregation he was writing to, but a group of congregations in that region. Okay, starting verse 6, this is our text for the day. Moreover, those who were the acknowledged leaders, what they were makes no difference to me. God does not judge by outward appearances. These leaders added nothing to me. On the contrary, they saw that I had been entrusted with the good news for the uncircumcised, just as Kepha had been the circumcised. Since the one working in Kepha to make him an emissary to the circumcised had worked in me to make me an emissary to the Gentiles, so having perceived what grace had been given to me, Yaakov, Kepha, and Yochanan, the acknowledged pillars of the community, extended to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, so that we might go to the Gentiles, and they to the circumcised. The only request was that we should remember the poor, which very thing I have spared no pains to do. Okay. That's our text for the day. And let me get this up. This is our study Galatians 2b. And of course, the running joke since we're doing the second section of the second chapter is to be or not to be. Never mind. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't get a chance to talk very often these days. Okay. So, our text for the day starting with 2:6. But from those who seem to be something, whatever they were, it makes no difference to me. God shows personal favoritism to no man. for those who seemed to be something added nothing to me. Okay. Added nothing to me. My best guess at what the Greek actually says is, for to me, those of repute, nothing conferred. I think that's as far as I can get in a more literal explanation. The most probable sense of the thought is that the Jerusalem leaders imparted no viewpoint to Paul with which he did not already have in line, or imposed upon him no additional requirements. In other words, in giving him their backing, they asked nothing further of him, nor complimented his teaching in any lack it may have demonstrated. That's somebody's commentary. Shalom Gail. Just got started. We're in verse 6, chapter 2. My point on this, some commentators connect this phrase to verse 2, the Jerusalem leadership. But the natural reading seems to connect better with verse 5, those Pharisees seeking conversion of the Gentiles. I think it's what's happening in Paul's normal letter writing style. He says something, then takes a sidestep and says something, then maybe comes back to his original topic, or he sidesteps into something else and never really gets ever back into the topic he started. For the fabulous theologian that he was a terrible letter writer, I have to say. And you know what? I need to fix this. So I think this is my own commentary here. So I'm going to label it as such. Okay. So to me, it reads better. Oh, you're just getting started. Okay. To be or not to be. Yeah, you're 3-4 minutes behind from when I'm talking, so you'll get caught up to that. Okay. So in my looking at it, it seems a little uncomfortable, the terminology that Paul's using, because he uses a phrase like those who seem to be in authority. Well, Paul had no trouble recognizing Peter, James, and John as being the leaders of the congregation. So and then he adds to the comment that, God's in control of who's doing what. So, somebody who claims to have standing means nothing to me. So to me, it reads like Paul's talking about the Galatian Pharisees who are trying to convert Gentiles into Pharisaism, not the Jerusalem leadership conferring their authority for Paul to continue what God's already having him do, if you follow me. One of the differences is we find out that the Jerusalem people extended the right hand of fellowship, but he wasn't given smicha directly. And smicha is that ordination where the leaders of the congregation lay their hands on somebody and commission them to either become a leader of the congregation or to be a servant or to be a teacher or something like that. Instead they gave him the right hand of fellowship, which may have confirmed the same thing. But it's not, I'm not entirely sure. And to me, it just kind of reads like that the end of his comment points to the Galatian Pharisees, people who think that they're in authority or claim to be in authority, did nothing to add to what I've already been doing, which is also true for the Jerusalem people. But then Paul's kind of dissing slightly the people who are trying to get after him in Galatia. So it's it could be that Paul was saying two different things at one time and it just didn't come across well. Remember, this is a letter. This is not God-breathed in the sense of Moses writing, "Thus says the Lord," and the Lord spoke to Moses saying, that kind of a thing. This is more of a letter. And we need to, consider the truth of what he says as being genuine, but recognize that this is a letter not necessarily God-breathed, in the sense that Paul saying this is what God is telling. There's a couple times he's saying God is telling you this, but he's using scripture then when he quotes that. But when he's, but usually when he's talking about him saying something, he says, "But I say this," or something, kind of like, Yeshua said the same thing, but Yeshua had authority of scripture, and Paul, being a great teacher, didn't have authority of making scripture, but he was writing letters with great advice. Okay, verse 7. But on the contrary, when they saw that the gospel for the uncircumcised had been committed to me, as the gospel for the circumcised was to Peter, and then it moves on from here, the rest of the statement. We're going to break off and get into the details here. Now, it sounds like from reading this, he's back to his recitation of what happened in Jerusalem when he went down there. So the previous verse seems to skip back to Galatia, but now we're back in Jerusalem. So, there's kind of some flexibility there as to how you're going to want to read that, the end of verse 6. So, anyways, this statement continues in verse 9. When they saw that the gospel for the uncircumcised had been committed to me, they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship. Verse 7 constitutes the positive aspect of the leader's response. And this is again, this is another commentary. This is back in Jerusalem again. And they committed to me, okay, pisteu. So the reason I keep looking up to the screen is my eyes right now are having a hard time finding a good spot to focus. So, I'm using trifocals because I need that, because I have 3 different choices of what works best. And so if you notice, I'm constantly coming up close and looking up and down. So I'm trying to find which of the trifocal works best right at this moment. It's really strange. It seems like my focus changes all the time. Part of it is post-surgery. There's still swelling and inflammation inside my eyeballs, but it's going away and things are getting better and more stable slowly. But the bottom line is, I can be reading something and then suddenly my eyes decide, nope, that focus won't work. And so I'm constantly trying to find something that works. So for right now, for instance, the upper one looks better than the middle one, where a few minutes ago the middle one looked better. So forgive me if I look like I'm nodding. I'm actually trying to figure out how I can read the best. Okay. So they committed to me. To commit, to think to be true, to be persuaded of, to credit, to place confidence in, to entrust a thing to one, his fidelity. Okay, I believe these people were targeted to become Paul's proselytes. In the light of the prophecy of Hosea, that those who were once not a people would become the people of Elohim, and those who had once not received mercy were now slated to become recipients of Elohim's mercy. Okay, as another commentary. And just in case you want to review this, we actually saw this last week, the week before, I should say. We read this in our Haftarah reading. This is verse 6 to 10. And she conceived again and bore a daughter. And God said to call her name Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah. I will save them by the Lord their God, and I will not save them by bow, nor sword, or battle, by horsemen or horses or horsemen. Okay, let me back up a little bit, just because. Verse 7, yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah. Remember, Hosea is prophesying to the northern tribes, the kingdom of Israel. This is during the time of the split kingdoms. So he's saying he's going to have no mercy on Israel, the northern kingdom, but he will have mercy on Judah, the southern kingdom. Okay. Verse 8, now when she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived and bore a son. The God said, call his name Lo-Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God. Again, this is the northern kingdom, Israel. Okay. Verse 10, Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. It shall come to pass in the place where it was said, you are not my people, there shall be said to them, you are sons of the living God. Okay, really nice commentary, and Shaul is this is sort of suggesting it. The commentators had suggesting this, that what Paul is saying is even the Gentiles are destined to become sons of the living God and should be treated as such automatically without having to go through a conversion. Anybody who's telling you you have to convert then is imposing on you a religious stigma and a religious requirement which doesn't need to be. In fact, as Paul goes on, he goes on to say that if you become if you take this circumcision of the conversion to being a Pharisee, you obligate yourself to do everything the Pharisees obligate you to do, which I would really strongly suggest you look up the rules of how to live as an Orthodox, modern Orthodox, because the rules are basically the same, except under modern Orthodox there's a lot more of them. And if you want to take a look, if you can find online and start reading a book called Shulchan Aruch, it's a compilation of all the rules of how to live your life as a modern Orthodox, and you'll get the idea of what's going to be forced on you should you make conversion. And what's forced on you, I should say, thrown on you, and it's your obligation because you stated you would follow this way of life. So, okay. The other quote is Isaiah 53:10. 53:10. Oh boy. Suddenly my word is starting to hang up, but I think I can get through this. Yet it pleased Adonai to crush him with illness, to see if he would present himself as a guilt offering. If he does, he will see his offspring, and he will prolong his days. And at his hand, Adonai's desire will be accomplished. Okay. This is thrown in by the commentators as this is the work that needed to be done, and there's nothing we can do to add to this. Okay. Contained with all this terminology and all the pronouns in the Hebrew, what this basically means is God was happy to make a sacrifice of Messiah, who presented himself as that guilt offering, as that sin offering. And the offspring is when you look upon the sacrifice of Yeshua and you tell Hashem that I want that sacrifice to count to me, he will make it count for me. And that is within God's desire for that to be accomplished. And so this is what is necessary for the Gentile. It's also necessary for the Jew, but understand that this is what's necessary for the Gentile, just to call upon the sacrifice of Messiah and ask God to make it count for them. Okay, to the Jew, Torah observance is a sign of salvation, a return to covenant obedience. Notice, and there are naysayers out there who don't like messianic stuff because they're saying, oh, we're trying to earn our way to salvation. No. Our observance of God's commandments is our reaction to being saved. It's our reaction of our gaining a relationship with Messiah. Because the basic tenet, and we talked about this during Shavuot this last weekend, what's the basic tenet of the covenant between God and man? The kernel is he will be God, we will be his people, he will take care of us, and we will obey him. So we can't call ourselves his people if we don't obey him, because we're not following the terms of the contract. Okay? Okay, Yechezkel. My servant David will be king over them, and all of them will have one shepherd, and they will live by my rulings and keep and observe my regulations. In this context, we're talking about a political leader. In the context, this is a political leader. Ezekiel 37, if you remember, is the chapter where God prophesies that Israel will be reborn as a nation, will resume as a nation, and be planted in their land and prosper. And the people will be one people. There won't be two. The whole thing about the two sticks. There won't be two kingdoms. There won't be two nations, but it will be one in Messiah. Okay, and that's what we need to point out here. We're not, this is not a two-house kind of thing. I don't understand the two-house thing at all, because the prophecy they cite most frequently as to providing the kernel of this two-house doctrine is this very statement that the two sticks will be one, meaning that the two have to be forever different. But that's not what the prophecy says, that the two kingdoms, the northern kingdom that was called Israel, the southern kingdom that was called Judah, will no longer be two separate kingdoms, but one kingdom under one king. And this is a prophecy of the future King David, the Messiah, Mashiach ben David, who will rule over them both as one people. So it doesn't make sense to me why this would be the way it is, but nonetheless. Okay. Also on the same idea, Acts 4, verses 36 to 37. Thus Yosef, whom the emissaries called Barnabas, which means the exhorter, a Levi and a native of Cyprus, sold a field which belonged to him and brought the money to the emissaries. Okay. To the Gentile, Torah observance is the goal of a holy lifestyle, a sign of turning away from pagan practices to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jewish tradition, then, is optional. Okay, so keeping the commandments is important. Jewish tradition is optional for the Gentile. Now, we as a congregation, and my family and I, we do observe a fair bit of tradition. We aren't following every last bit of it, but we do embrace those traditions that are useful and beneficial and help us in our walk. Okay, so why are we bringing this Acts chapter 4, verse 36 and 37 into this? Because he's of the tribe of Levi, okay? And so, and by the way, some people insist this Barnabas is the same Barnabas that traveled with Shaul. The text never says that. It could be a different guy with the same name. And it doesn't really say, the text never really says one way or the other. However, it says this guy was a native of Cyprus, which puts him in that right neighborhood. Okay. So, in case someone tries to argue that it absolutely has to be the same guy, it would be cool if it was, but it doesn't have to be. Either way, the point is that he was of the tribe of Levi, and he sold a piece of property and brought the money to the emissaries. What does this mean? Okay. Well, if he's of the tribe of Levi, what are the laws? What are the laws from God about a Levi owning property? He can own the house that he lives in the cities that are set aside for the Levites and the priests, but he cannot own land of his own. He can do subsistence farming in the area around the Levitical city, but he cannot own his own fields and farmlands. So what's going on here is this is set in juxtaposition to what begins immediately after this in Acts chapter 5 with Hananiah and Siphrah, who sold a piece of property and then lied about it. Here, this sets the standard. Sold a piece of property he wasn't supposed to own, and brought the proceeds to the emissary. So basically, what this Yosef is saying is, I want to be totally kosher. I want to be totally right. I want to be frum. And so he did, and he got apparently great notoriety for that, because the very next verse, in the very next chapter, we have a couple of people trying to manipulate the system and died as a result. But that's actually a different story. I just wanted to point out this is what's supposed to be happening when Jews and Gentiles meet Messiah. You start becoming kosher. You start becoming fromm. You start becoming observant of God's commandments. And even those traditions which are beneficial and helpful, nonetheless, you start walking in God's ways. And even in the traditions, as long as it helps with that. Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 16:19. Adonai, my strength, my fortress, my refuge in time of trouble. We need to be reading this today. Oh, yeah, we are reading this today. The nations will come to you from the ends of the earth, saying, our ancestors inherited nothing but lies, futile idols, completely useless. And this is the statement of the Gentile. Okay, the statement of the Jew is, I need to get to keeping the commandments of God. The statement of the Gentile is, what we learned from our ancestors is lies, worthless idols, useless idols, completely useless. And thus we come wanting to learn the right way. Okay, and then find a couple more citations out of Zechariah 2:11. When that time comes, many nations will join themselves to Adonai. They will be my people, and I will live among you. Then you will know that it was Adonai Tsevaot who sent me to you. Okay. So the many nations will come, and that's going to be a sign. So within Messianic circles, instead of being looking askance or trying to keep distance from the Gentiles, we need to be embracing and celebrating the Gentiles, because this is the message coming in. And in many different ways and in many different styles. We have people come into our congregation and says, I've been reading my Bible and it just doesn't make sense what I'm hearing. Now with where I'm at and what I'm doing. So let me come in and learn. And so we, bring people in to come in and learn. Okay. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 56. This is your favorite section, Gail. Here's what Adonai says. Observe justice, do what is right, for my salvation is close to coming, my righteousness to being revealed. Happy is the person who does this, anyone who grasps it firmly, who keeps Shabbat and does not profane it, and keeps himself from doing any evil. A foreigner joining Adonai should not say, Adonai will separate me from his people. Likewise, the eunuch should not say, I am only a dried-up tree. For here's what Adonai says, as for the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose what pleases me, and hold fast to my covenant, in my house within my walls, I will give them a power and a name greater than sons and daughters. I will give him an everlasting name that will not be cut off. And the foreigners who join themselves to Adonai, to serve him, to love the name of Adonai, and to be his workers, all who keep Shabbat and do not profane it, and hold fast to my covenant, I will bring them to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all peoples. Adonai Elohim says, He who gathers Israel's exiles, there are yet others I will gather, besides those gathered already. Okay, so this is the promise of God for the Gentile, that we're going to be brought in and counted as equal sharers. Sounds like Romans 11. Equal sharers in what God has given to Israel. We will be considered equal parts as Israel. And this is what Paul is getting to. It's in the way I'm doing, it's kind of a long way around. But the idea is this is, we need to know these arguments. We need to know these verses. We need to know how to lay this out, because we have arguments in two directions. The argument to the Orthodox is Gentiles don't need to convert to be acceptable to God. Rather, the fact that we are filled with the Spirit of God and that miracles do in fact occur around us and for us shows that we already have God's favor. So anything to be orthodox, or in the historical context of the letter, to become a Pharisee, is not needed. In fact, it actually makes you worse because you obligate yourself to their traditions and their lifestyles, whether or not it has any benefit or it works in your favor or makes it hard for you. Okay. Verse 8. For he who worked effectively in Peter for the apostleship to the circumcised also worked effectively in me toward the Gentiles. Okay, so for he who worked effectively, same God, same Messiah, same Spirit, same message, same result, different people. Okay, understand. So it's the same message, it's the same gospel, it's the same methodology. Okay, we don't bring Gentiles in and then leave them to live their own way, the way they think is right. Rather, we bring in Gentiles and we teach them holiness by God's standard. Okay. Romans 3:29-30. Or is God the God of the Jews only? Or is God the God of the Jews only? Isn't he also the God of the Gentiles? Yes, he is indeed the God of the Gentiles. Because as you will admit, God is one. Therefore he will consider righteous the circumcised. He will consider righteous the circumcised on the ground of trusting, and the uncircumcised through that same trusting. Does it follow that we abolish Torah by this trusting? Heaven forbid. On the contrary, we confirm Torah. Okay. So, what Paul is writing to the Romans, remember, a fractured, mixed congregation of Jews and Gentiles. Okay. He's telling the Gentiles, we do Torah. We confirm the importance of Torah. We're not supposed to live without Torah. We're supposed to live in Torah. Okay? And so there's a little bit of a back and forth, actually a lot of back and forth in Romans, where Paul takes his time getting after one group or another, either the Jews or the Gentiles, and telling them why they're wrong and why they need each other. And in this case, this is reminding the Gentile that they need to walk in Torah. Okay, to the circumcised, to Jews, that is native Israel, possibly a specific reference to believers who were Pharisees. Oops, hold on. I'm adjusting some things as I go here. Okay. And when James, verse 9, Cephas and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that had been given to me, they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised. Cephas, possibly a play between Matityahu 16:18 and Acts 9:5 and 6. Peter means rock. Cephas means stone. Kepha means rock. Okay, from Matityahu 16:18. I also tell you this, you are Kepha, which means rock. And on this rock I will build my community, and the gates of Sheol will not overcome it. Now remember what the comment is. Okay. If you have a Catholic background, you know this verse is used to elevate Peter to a position of superiority above everybody else. However, if you take the comment in context, where Yeshua asked the disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" and Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And then Yeshua responded, "Flesh and blood haven't told you this, but the Spirit. So I tell you this: you are this rock on which I will build my community." This rock meaning that he is Messiah, not the rock that Kepha is the leader. It's in the context that way. So nonetheless, Acts 9 verses 5 and 6. "Sir, who are you?" he asked. "I am Yeshua, and you are persecuting me. But get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you have to do." Okay, for people who say Paul is not an apostle, guess what, folks? Verse 6, what is that? That's a commission. You will be told what you're going to do. Okay? That's a commission. That's an apostleship. Now, and again, because Paul has to go into this a little bit in his letter, we will be touching on this comment. We've done it a few times already, and a couple times from now still, where he calls himself an apostle. He's not wrong. He's not lying. He's not even stretching the truth. He was sent by God for a task. Guess what? That's an apostleship. Was he one of the original 12? No. He kind of hints at he thinks he's one of them. And you can argue, maybe he was thinking a little too much of himself when he said that, or he's proving and confirming that he was actually going to be that 12th replacement, except that the people had an election and put someone else in there already. Realistically, in the long run, none of that really matters. The fact that Paul was called by God, called by Yeshua himself, I should say, called by Yeshua himself to go and do something, guess what? That's an apostleship. Okay? By just the definition of the word, being sent on a task to do something, that's an apostleship. Okay. Then perceive the grace in the Greek, and having known the grace which was given to me. Grace, charis, usually translated as grace, but it may better be stated as favor or blessing. Okay, I know we've been covering this for a couple of years now and trying to rethink the word grace. It's traditionally interpreted to mean unmerited favor, and I'm proposing the idea that actually it should mean merited favor, such as in favor or blessing or status, and because otherwise, what they're saying is that Paul was a rascal, Paul was a sinner, but the grace of God was that he was given this task despite his sinfulness. Okay, and that doesn't seem to make sense. It seems to me that Paul, after 14 years after he met Messiah on the road to Antioch, he finally goes to. Excuse me, what's that? Excuse me? Damascus. You're right, Damascus, sorry. You're right, Damascus. 14 years later, he comes to check in and make sure that what he's doing is right. It means that he's already been doing much for God's kingdom before he even went down to Jerusalem. Okay. So, little commentary. The Netzarim leadership of Jerusalem had recognized that Paul's insights were not repackaged rabbinic teachings, nor was this is somebody's commentary, nor was his message learned through the agency of a Pharisaic yeshiva, a school of study or oral law. The Netzarim leadership of Jerusalem, that's the Messianics, by the way. One of the other names for the Messianic community at the beginning, meaning the root or the offshoot. The leadership of Jerusalem understood that divine favor had been given to Paul so that he should be the one to disciple, to teach the Gentiles. Okay. They gave him the right hand of fellowship, not that Shaul needed Jerusalem's authority to proclaim the good news, but it was a public acknowledgement Shaul was indeed preaching the correct good news. The implication is those that were preaching the other not good news were not sent out under Jerusalem's authority, thus in error. Okay. Having made the point that the good news, as he proclaims it among the Gentiles, as in verse 2, is something he learned from God and not from any human being, and especially not from the other emissaries. Shaul nevertheless insists that its essence is the same as that of the good news which the other emissaries proclaimed to the Jews, namely this: the Messiah died for our sins in accordance with what the Tanakh says, and he was buried and he was raised the third day in accordance to what the Tanakh says. Okay, and then verse 10. They desired only that we should remember the poor, the very thing which I also was eager to do. In fact, Shaul appears to have been very focused on tzedakah, charity, to Jerusalem. Okay? And we know, let me move this down so it's all on one page. Okay. Verses 27 to 30. During this time, some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch, and one of them was Agav, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that there was going to be a severe famine throughout the Roman Empire. It took place while Claudius was emperor. So the Talmidim decided to provide relief to the brothers living in Yehuda, each according to his means, and they did it, sending their contributions to the elders in the care of Barnabas and Shaul. Okay. So we understand this. All the time that Paul's talking about gathering money, it's for this purpose. He's never talking about taking a collection to support the local congregation. Never. It's only the only thing he writes about in his letters is collecting to send relief to Jerusalem. Okay, but people twist those instructions and say, "Oh, this is why you have to give to your local group, and you have to do it weekly." Because some of the Paul's instruction is that the first day of the week, set aside something out of what you've profited, so that when there's a collection, you'll be ready and not embarrassed. Well, that's in context with collecting for relief to Jerusalem, not for supporting your local congregation. There are other ways the local congregation can be supported, and not by requiring weekly contributions. Okay, Romans 15, 25 to 28. But now I'm going to Jerusalem with aid for God's people there. For Macedonia and Achaia thought it would be good to make some contribution to the poor among God's people in Jerusalem. They were pleased to do it, but the fact is that they owe it to them. For if the Gentiles have shared with the Jews spiritual matters, then the Gentiles clearly have a duty to help the Jews in material matters. So when I have finished this task and made certain that they have received this fruit, I will leave for Spain and visit you on my way there. Okay, 1 Corinthians 16, 1 to 4. Now in regard to the collection being made for God's people, notice not the local congregation. This is all in context of sending relief to Jerusalem. God's people, you are to do the same as I directed the congregations in Galatia to do. Every week on Motzei Shabbat, this is Dr. Stern's translation. I think, in English translation it says the beginning of the week, but that's Motzei Shabbat. After the Sabbath is over, that's actually the beginning of the week. Each of you should set some money aside according to his resources and save it up so that when I come, I won't have to do fundraising. And when I arrive, I will give letters of introduction to the people you have approved, and I will send them to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems appropriate that I go too, they will go along with me. So caring for the poor is one of the signs of belonging to Messiah. Okay, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61. The Spirit of Adonai Elohim is upon me, because Adonai has anointed me to announce good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives, to let out into light those bound in the dark, and proclaim the year of the favor of Adonai, the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, yet provide for those in Sion who mourn. So aiding people in need is one of those signs of believers in action. This is why we have tzedakah. We have that silver tin that's set up with where the donations go. If you want to give there and specifically have that money only go to helping people in need, that's what it's for. Okay, and you can give that way. That's your choice. Okay, then Matthew 25 verses 31 to 46. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, accompanied by all the angels, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. The sheep he will place at his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, you who my Father has blessed, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you from the founding of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you made me your guest. I needed clothes, and you provided them. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the people who have done what God wants will reply, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger or make you our guest, or needing clothes and provided them? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? The king will say to them, Yes, I tell you that whenever you did these things for one of the least important among these brothers of mine, you did them for me. And I need to comment on this part, because as a congregation, you have to know that even if you individually don't do all this stuff, as a congregation, as a community, we do all these things. And I'm really, really pleased that I can tell you that, because not every congregation does this. But every one of these categories, if someone came in with a need, we've tried to meet it. If they came in needing food, we gave them from our food stores at the congregation, or we would set up for them to get a gift card at a supermarket so they can shop for food. We've given clothes, or we've given gift certificates for clothing stores so they can go and get what they need. I'm amazed at how far we travel sometimes to go visit somebody who's sick and in the hospital. We've done that. We do that. And even visiting people in prison, we do that. As a congregation, as a group, we do that. And I may be the only one in the whole congregation visiting people in prison. Well, except for right now, all the programs are shut down. But once everything opens up again, I'll be back and leading those groups again. So as a congregation, we do all those things. All of us as a community, we do those things. And so don't think that there's something deficient in you. As a congregation, we're doing all of it. And so the question is, what part of this can I join into? What bit I can do for helping others? I don't have to do everything. You don't have to do everything. If you do just one particular thing, if your thing is to make sure that we have canned goods in our closets, so that if somebody comes needing food, or dry goods even, that we have something to give them. If you want to, if you want to donate to help get food for people, you can always put something in the silver tin and put a little note on it saying you want it specifically used for buying food for people, paying for food for people, or housing somebody who needs a place to stay, stuff like that. We do all that stuff, and you can contribute what you can contribute, even if it's just your time and effort. If you want to take on the role of handling the lending library. We have a ton of books in some cabinets that never get used because we have nobody operating the lending library. It would be nice if somebody could categorize the whole thing, set it up in a proper order, and then, make sure people know that it's available and for people to take things out and to read them. So that's the people that God said, that Yeshua said, these are the blessed. Now the other half, then he will also speak to those on his left, saying, Get away from me, you who are cursed. Go off into the fire prepared for the adversary and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. Thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. A stranger, and you did not welcome me. Needing clothes, and you did not give them to me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they too will reply, Lord, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, a stranger, needing clothes, sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you? And he will answer them, Yes, I tell you, whenever you refuse to do it for the least important of these people, you refuse to do it for me. They will go off to eternal punishment, but those who have done what God wants will go to eternal life. Okay, so in other words, if you think about it, how you deal with other people shows what's really in your heart when it comes to loving God, or maybe not loving God. And the clue that the clue is whether or not we are good to the stranger, we are good to those in need. And Yeshua counts this very, very, very highly. And so that's what I wanted to bring out of this, is that we as a congregation do all this good stuff. Okay, so you don't have to worry about being part of the group that's on the left hand. However, you do want to be participating if you want to share that blessing somehow, some way, even if it's supporting with stuff, even setting aside money for the poor, for the tzedakah box. You can take part in enabling those people that are doing it, even if you yourself can't do anything. Okay, what little bit you can do is beneficial, and that's for the good of the poor. Okay, and this, of course, is Paul getting the right hand of fellowship from Peter and James and John, or at least one of them. At least that's the graphic. Okay, that's it. Questions, comments, rebukes. If you have anything you want to add, I understand there's a 3 or 4 minute delay, so I'll mark time here. I should probably warn you when I'm getting to the last paragraph, and so if you have something you want to throw in, get it done before, so we don't have a long delay waiting for the picture and the sound to catch up. So we're going to hang back here for a couple minutes. Feel free to type in any questions or comments or rebukes. I'll take that even. Just a reminder again, doing the YouTube thing, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So thank you for pointing that out, that you do get notified when the YouTube goes live, and that's good. It's easier to do it that way. So that's useful. And so if you have any questions or any comments, any rebukes, let's go ahead. I'm going to hang out here for another couple minutes to wait for your responses to come in, and then we can close off for the evening. I'm glad things got working. I don't know if I told you my dilemma earlier today. We had gone out shopping in the afternoon, and Abigail had mentioned that it was, you got to hurry up, it's 4:50. I'm thinking, panic. I run everything to, run upstairs, get everything set up, get it logged in, and just as I've got everything running, I realize, wait a second, it's barely 5 o'clock. We meet at 6. I was, for some reason, I just went into a panic. It's that lockdown brain, I guess, not keeping track of anything. Anyways, we're doing okay. So I'm okay, really. So thank you for coming. If you have anything left, you know what I should have done if I was smart? I should have typed this in. So let me get that done now. It's hard to see to type. There. Okay. That way you'll see the text right away, so you know I'm done. If I would, again, if I could remember, I'd do that much sooner. That way you know what's coming up. Okay, so you get a chance. Let me give you a minute or two to... Did I spell that right? Yeah, okay. The eye doctor said once all the inflammation's done with my eyes, I'm going to end up getting a cataract. Although right now we're driving a Honda. Supposedly everything's going to be perfect after the cataracts are in. So I'm kind of looking forward to that because everything's perpetually fuzzy. The focus is a little bit fuzzy, and there are times and locations and stuff where it's a little bit better, but not always and not often. In fact, right now everything is pretty fuzzy. So, okay. Well, if there's no questions, comments, or rebukes, we'll go ahead and close down for the day. And thank you very much for coming. We will see you Shabbat right here on this stage. I have asked my contact over at the church to see if they're interested in letting us in, even if they themselves aren't meeting, because since there's a big rebellion amongst a lot of churches for this last Sunday. I haven't heard back, so they're apparently thinking about it. Given the good turnout and the good happening that we had this last Sunday at the park, I'm wondering if we should continue doing the same. And I'm wondering that out loud. I want to get your response and your consideration on this, because it was really nice to meet together and to hang out together, and to try to keep things safe as far as Big Brother is concerned. We can simply, we can actually still meet on Shabbat, but we'll just have to do, a non-cooking kind of lunch, sort of supplying our own like we did on Sunday, although some people brought for everybody. But if you pretty much bring your own, then we can call it more of an impromptu meeting, and maybe we can do a little worship and maybe a little bit of our prayer service, but mostly just parsha discussion, and keep it informal. That way